Hello, everybody. This is Empowering Democracy. I'm your host, Joe Firestone, and our topic for tonight, how can Harris and Walz landslide Trump and Vance? Is there a way? Well, that's what we're going to talk about here tonight. Let me see who's here. I can't see anybody here yet. I do see some folks probably tuning in on Twitter, but I don't know how many folks are here. I'm going to start off tonight. Oh, there's Lana. Hi, Lana. How you doing? And Steve. Hello, Steve. How are you? I'm going to start off tonight with a video which is about the rural areas of the United States, and specifically about a little county in Kentucky. And the title of it is, We Talk to Real Swing Voters. What they told us will shock you. I wasn't shocked, I knew this, but it's really worthwhile to share it. Take it back to the beginning. What it's about is Ellicott County in Kentucky. You see the shadows of FDR and Donald Trump there.
Sometimes politics is a lot less straightforward than we're led to believe, especially in a place like this. Elliott County looks like any other part of rural Kentucky.
I'm sorry, it's Elliott County. I correct myself. I said it was Ellicott County. It's Elliott County.
But it's not. In fact, it might have the weirdest politics of any place in the country. That's because Elliott County voted for Democrats in every presidential election for 144 years straight. FDR, Truman, JFK, LBJ, Carter, Clinton, Obama, and then
in 2016, vote for Donald Trump?
Yep.
2020?
Yep.
2024?
Yep. Definitely.
The single largest swing from Obama to Trump happened right here. But a few years later, something just as surprising happened. Elliott County voted for Governor Andy Beshear, a Democrat. So what's the deal with Elliott County? Is it just an outlier? Or is there something deeper going on here? Something with implications that could reach far beyond Eastern Kentucky.
I sure hope implications do reach a lot farther than Eastern Kentucky. But going on. Okay, that guy Russell, who made this video, is talking to people in Elliott County.
Did you hear that? Is that on camera?
Here's one. You might recognize what's going on. I don't know.
I couldn't tell you. If you told me you paid me $100,000 to tell you what's going on here, I would be broke.
Yeah.
That guy is Donnie. He runs the Big Four store in Elliott County. Here you'll find Union stickers, Trump shirts, and a rare collection of fine art made by Donnie himself.
So how many generations are you in Elliott County, and who's this?
That's my dad. He built the house in 1950. better, been in the store business for 24 years. I mean, some of the best people you meet around here.
Elliott is home to some 7,000 people, 99% white. Aside from a few churches, a gas station, and a prison, there's not a whole lot here. But it is known for one thing.
This county, it's the only one in the country that has voted 5 points to Trump. Only county in America that did that.
So, this, of course, is rural America and rural white America. And this radical change happened not too many years ago in rural white America in Kentucky. Not just in Elliott County. And in counties like that, rural counties like that, all over America. Things were a little different in Deep South counties, and they were a little different in rural counties in Iowa, in Minnesota, North Central states. And things were a little different, in Western counties. But the urban-rural split over the period of the 21st century so far. Places that once would vote for Democrats again and again and again shifted over to the Republican side. The Democrats, meanwhile, were gaining in the suburban areas. There was a realignment, of the electorate. And now, increasingly today, it's more the rural areas in various states.
How do you explain that? Why did such a radical shift happen? What's your understanding of that?
Well, I don't care what, if I was a coon hunter and I bought a dog and I sell coon hides and my dog won't tree a coon, I'm going to get me another one. Same with these two guys. Biden ain't done nothing for me, and I'm going to switch to a new dog.
What do you think of George W. Bush?
Piece of shit. I started out a Democrat because my father was. And that was just something, it's just like your last name. You're a Democrat.
Growing up, I was always taught you got to vote Democrat, vote Democrat, vote Democrat.
What did it mean to be a Democrat? Was it connected to anything?
That is just how the county went. And that's who was helping us.
When a county votes for one party for 144 years straight, it can be hard to know where that kind of loyalty even comes from. Some folks say that FDR's New Deal had something to do with it. The New Deal put millions to work, built roads and schools and bridges, created Social Security, and established by law. It cemented the idea that Democrats were a party for the working class.
Democrats were looked at for the poor people.
Yep.
They were for the poor people.
Our great-great-grandparents were Democrats. They believed that was the union support. And it has somewhat changed in this area in the last few election cycles, if you will.
Yeah.
It's changed drastically, honestly.
As recently as the mid-90s, Kentucky was a Democratic stronghold. Democrats controlled the state house, the governor's mansion, and the majority of congressional seats. But eventually, things began to shift. Of free trade and Wall Street. Democrats stopped chasing.
And there he is, the guy who did so much to make that change, Bill Clinton.
Blue-collar voters in rural areas and shifted their attention to white-collar voters in the suburbs. And that left a vacuum that Republicans, who supported basically the same corporate agenda, were happy to fill. By 2012, Elliott County was the last rural county to vote for a Democrat in a presidential election. Not just in Kentucky, but across all majority white counties in the South. Then 2016 rolled around.
Sadly, the American dream is dead. Bring it back. But if I get elected president, I will bring it back.
I think a lot of it that we're tired. I'm not saying that Donald Trump's not crooked. I'm not saying Joe Biden's not crooked. They're all crooked.
That sentiment, of course, is very important. So many people who are supporting Trump.
But, you know, whenever we get an extra $30 or something in our paychecks, that makes a difference. I'm doing hay to try to feed the kids. I'm doing everything that I can know to do as, you know, not only a parent,
Yeah.
but as a person, you know.
Is that getting harder?
It's getting harder.
It's getting harder as time goes on.
Yes.
How much opportunity is there for kids that are born in this county? And do most of them come back and live here?
Most of them, there's nothing here to do.
Everything good come to LA County has been with a union job. You go away somewhere to work, drive 2 hours, come home, hoping to retire before you got hurt or crippled. That's the only people that have done well here.
Like the rest of the country, Elliott County has seen a dramatic decline in unions, which went hand in hand with stagnating wages. At the end of the 80s, the median household income in Elliott sat at $37,000, adjusting for inflation. Today, it's about $39,000. In other words, they haven't seen a raise in over 30 years, while the cost of living has only gone up.
Even after 140 years of voting for Democrats, we have lived not in poverty, not near the poverty line, in extreme poverty.
The poverty level being so hard, it was like, does he have a rope to throw us? And that's what it was.
Trump wasn't getting votes from New York City and LA and all these big towns. He was getting votes from these little counties all across America.
Yeah.
I think it's his anger, and everybody else in this country is angry. His anger filled his campaign, and it was like, oh, I felt this for such a long time. Someone's like,
Okay, so I think I've done enough of this. Okay, at that point, or at this point, I should say. But the point is that in very many states across the country, in many states that are deep red right now, they are deep red because the rural areas are so deep red. Now, that was recognized by Harris-Walz today, campaigning there. It was rare for Democrats to go down there and campaign. They were just accepting that the rural people in that area of Georgia were not going to vote for them. Okay. And that's true not only in the rural areas of Georgia, it's true in the rural areas of many states. Now, okay, I think Harris-Walz are going to try to turn that around, of course. They'll be doing more bus tours, I believe, and they'll be trying to introduce themselves to people who have not voted for Democrats, okay, for a number of cycles now. But it doesn't seem to me that just talking to people is going to do the trick. That if Democrats are to change the situation, okay, if they're going to be successful, if they're going to turn what is a nail biter, okay, of an election, okay, an election which is very close now, if they intend to change it, they have to do something different to break the solid red areas. They have to get some votes in the solid red areas if they're really going to run away from Trump. And it's important that they develop very large majorities because because the polling organizations seem to underestimate Trump's support very frequently. Right now, the new polls from Bloomberg and Morning Consult are showing that in 6 out of 7 of the battleground states, that Kamala, is now ahead. They're all close, though, except Wisconsin, where she's 8 points ahead. Now, those states could easily turn around, and there are already signs that Trump is starting to come back up in some of the states, in spite of the fact that he's been obviously extremely panicked at what's going on and seems to be melting down in different situations. So, also there are rumblings, a lot of information available about how Trump and his people are planning on contesting the election if he loses again in perhaps a more systematic and efficient way that he did in 2020. There's a lot of fear out, about that. That fear may be justified, but probably the best defense, against that fear, other than getting prepared for the machinations, may be more important, than getting concerned about all the machinations, is to not have close polls in the first place. Lana says the problem with Trump is that he doesn't actually gas about anyone except himself. Of course, Robert said both the Democrats and Republican parties are full of crap. Lana said, what did Harris-Walz say? What did Harris-Walz say about what, Lana? Robert says, Lana, good question. Everyone, please press that like button. Yeah, please press that like button. Please do. Steve Wolfbrand says, Morning Consult is a terrible poll. Yeah, it does have that reputation. Lana, though, makes the point, which I've been trying to make. And she says, I think the polls are way too close. If they are thinking this election is a done deal, they're simply deluding themselves again. And I couldn't agree more. It is way too close. Lana asked, who watched the CNN interview with Harris-Walz? I only saw Tim Black's take, not the whole thing. Tim made some serious fun of how Harris answered the questions. Hilarious. Well, Sabby Sabs also gave a very critical review of the interview. On the other hand, John Favreau and his sidekick, I forget what their podcast is called, but they're refugees from the Obama administration, and they thought that Kamala and Tim Walz did wonderfully. They were just effusive about the whole thing. Also, Anthony Scaramucci, who's these days is very much opposed, to Donald Trump, and very serious about working to defeat him, also thought that Harris-Walz did pretty well, but Scaramucci was a little disturbed at the lighting in the interview. that it was showing Harris, okay, is a little tired. And he says, it's no wonder she's tired because she's been traveling all around and really campaigning hard. But he still thought the staging was off. It should have been done so she didn't look so tired. And he remarked that the lighting at the convention was just perfect for her. And he went into a bunch of technical details that he was concerned about. But basically, he had no criticism of the content. He thought that Harris had great content. So the reviews are very mixed. What you see depends on where you sit and where you stand. Those people in the mainstream of the Democratic Party are ebullient about the interview. Those who are on the left of the Democratic Party are not so ebullient about the interview. What did Harris and Walz say today on the road? That was my question. I don't know. Joe, did I watch the CNN interview? Yes, I watched the CNN interviews, and I watched also another 4 breakdowns. The CNN interview. And the views of the interview were widely varying. I tended to agree with what Sabby Sabs had to say about the interview. But the fact is, I agree with Sabby most of the time. So that wasn't really surprising. If I'd seen the Tim Black take, I probably would have agreed with that too. But I have no doubt that many mainstream people thought that her performance was at least acceptable and competent. I suspect that is their opinion, though it's not our opinion. Steve Wolpern said, just had a state senator switch from Democrat to Republican. Many are doing so. That wouldn't be surprising in California because the Democrats don't seem to be getting anything done in California for people. But that's another comment. Lana says, I wish you would look at Tim Black's take. It's absolutely a comedy. Okay, I'll try to find it. But the basic point here is I agree with what you say, Lana. This is far too close. And Kamala isn't offering much that's new. She might do very well, okay, in the cities. There are indicators that she has some good things going on. For example, evidently registration in groups that are likely to vote for her in various groups is ranging from 100% greater than in 2022 to as much as 175% greater in one group. Well, those are people who've been registering since she took over the campaign. They're people who are likely to vote because they're new registrants. And there are millions of them. So that is looking good. There are a number of things who are looking good for her. I'm not celebrating because they're looking good for her. I'm celebrating because they're looking good for Trump, to be defeated. And as you know, I have Trump derangement syndrome, and therefore I will be very, very glad when he is defeated. But I am worried about the rural areas in the United States and the Democrats getting increasingly shutting out of the rural areas. We all know why that is, because the Democrats haven't done anything for the rural areas. Okay, I can't help, but laugh at what Lana said. I'll interrupt what I was saying and give you Tim was commenting on Walt's face that he looked like he was passing a kidney stone listening to her. That's just one of his comments. And Lana says, the rural areas are important. Okay, so back to business. Yeah, the rural areas are very, very important. There are poor people, there are working class people, farmers, of course, who live in these rural areas. farmers and small business people who are struggling. And especially that area of Kentucky is, very emblematic, of them. Why were they supporting Andy Bashir? It's not that Andy Bashir is a flaming radical. It's that Andy Bashir looks back to the FDR Democrats and to FDR and what he accomplished. And that's the source of Andy Bashir's political power. That's why he's winning in that county and all over Kentucky, because he's an old-fashioned Democrat. He's an FDR Democrat. In some ways, Tim Walz is also an FDR Democrat. Robert says kidney stones are very painful. Yes, I understand they're painful because my son once had to pass a kidney stone. That was awful. So I'm lucky I've been able to avoid that experience thus far. Knock on wood. I got some wood over here, so I'm going to knock on it. But anyway, what this stream is really about is what can the Democrats, and Kamala do to run up the score on Trump, in rural areas, so that states that now look solid for Trump actually begin to go over to the Democratic side. Some of these states, for example, in Texas, Trump is expected to win Texas, of course. In fact, it's even a likely Trump state. But if the rural areas could be shifted, then Trump would not win Texas. The reason why things are so close in Georgia is because the rural areas are all solid for Trump. There's a situation in Arizona. It's not quite the same there in Arizona because fight is going on in the suburban areas of Arizona. But in the rural areas also, the ones that are predominantly white, there the Trumpists are. And all across the country, that's the story. In Minnesota, it would be a landslide if the rural areas came over to the Democrats. All the north central states, it would be a landslide if many of them were to come over. So, what could possibly make them come over? And would the Democrats ever do it? There is one thing that would make them come over. There is one thing that would change the picture in Elliott County for the people who live there, but not just in Elliott County, in rural counties all over the United States. There's one thing that would wake up the rural counties, the economies of all of the rural counties. And that thing is the federal job guarantee. If Kamala were to come out for a federal job guarantee and campaign hard on it, then Harris and Walz would sweep. So let's talk about the federal job guarantee. By the way, that's not the only thing she has to do. But let us talk about the federal job guarantee. I'm going to put up on the screen a very good report by Pavlina Chernyeva, written in 2018. She later wrote a book, The Case for the Job Guarantee, which I've done 3 live streams about, which is a very, very good book, which is basically an expansion of this report. It's called Working Paper number 902 from the Levy Economics Institute. and I have the link, okay, in the description. The Job Guarantee Design, Jobs, okay, and Implementation. It was written by Pavlina in April 2018. She's at the Levy Economics Institute of Bard College, and she's also the chairperson of the economics department, okay, at Bard College, okay, as well. And she is an excellent, excellent scholar, and one of the leading scholars on the job guarantee, if not today, the leading scholar on the job guarantee. Though there are some other pretty good ones. Certainly Randy Ray is excellent on the job guarantee. Warren Mosler is very notable on job guarantee. And Bill Mitchell is wonderful on the job guarantee as well. So I don't want to give the impression that the only great person on the job guarantee, okay, is Pavlina. But this report, okay, was excellently done. So let's get to some of the high points. The job guarantee is a public option for jobs. It is a permanent, federally funded, and locally administered program that supplies voluntary employment opportunities on demand for all who are ready and willing to work at a living wage. While it is first and foremost a jobs program, it has the potential to be transformative by advancing the public purpose and improving working conditions, people's everyday lives, and the economy as a whole. And she goes on about the working paper provides a blueprint for operationalizing the proposal. She starts off with conceptual understanding of the problem of unemployment. And she says that at the macroeconomic level, it's understood as a monetary problem often, and it's a situation that cannot be remedied by private firms. The private sector is unable to produce and maintain tight full employment over the short run. That is why things are bad in certain local rural areas here in the United States, because the private sector is unable to maintain full employment in those areas. That's due to many policies, of course, our trade policy, the fact that industry has moved out, okay, of rural America. Some of the causes, okay, are well known. The NAFTA trade agreement, tax advantages being given to companies that, would move industry abroad. This is a litany that everybody, okay, is familiar with, but the end result is also something everybody is familiar with. A lot of the United States economically is flyover country. And it's flyover country because there's little economic activity inside of the rural areas, okay, in the United States. But Pavlina points out it's a problem best understood as a silent epidemic. There's a distinct and discernible geographical pattern and propagation mechanism of unemployment, which mimics the behavior of a virus or a mass contagion, and then she cites herself. Joblessness behaves like a disease and generates large social health and economic costs. And she points out the costs of these social and economic ills, both in real and financial terms, are already, quote, paid for, unquote, by the economy and society at large. She says this is a problem by design and a public sector failure. Unemployment is a problem created by concrete policy measures targeting a non-accelerating rate of unemployment, okay, the NAIRU, austerity policies. The government has chosen an explicit policy of keeping a percentage of the population in voluntary unemployment. The NAIRU is a policy benchmark The government is also responsible for supporting the unemployed. The unemployed are already in the public sector. Government, public institutions, and civil society are not only paying the direct cost of unemployment, but more importantly, are already bearing the large associated real costs of unemployment. It's also a moral failure. Unemployment has been used as the main bulwark against inflation and economic instability and is considered a necessary evil, quote unquote. And she finishes this part. Unemployment is the failure and responsibility of the public sector and is already, quote, paid for. By contrast, the job guarantee offers a superior policy option to the current approach, and one that is macroeconomically sound and humane. It pays to employ the unemployed, preventing and reducing the outsized cost of employment, supporting the production of valuable public goods, and investing in and empowering people, planet, and community. Objectives of the job guarantee. The core policy of the job guarantee is to provide decent jobs at decent pay on demand to all individuals of legal working age who want to work, irrespective of labor market status, race, sex, color, or creed. Now, what I would add to that, I would not say provide decent jobs at decent pay. I would say provide decent jobs at a pay level that is a socially inclusive living wage. I think that's a very important part of the job guarantee. I think Pavlina does too. I'm not sure why she didn't state so here. I mean, what is decent pay and what is not is largely subjective. What is socially inclusive has to do with the cost of living in different areas of the United States, and certain levels of pay in some areas are far from socially inclusive in other areas of the United States. She states then some additional objectives: to guarantee a basic human right as outlined in the UN Declaration of Human Rights and Franklin D. Roosevelt's call for an economic Bill of Rights. To institute a public option for work, i.e. an employment safety net, to create job opportunities in close proximity to the unemployed. Now, this is a key. Okay, you notice when the people from Elliott County were talking about it, they were talking about once having good union jobs, but that they have to travel 2 hours to get to those good union jobs and come back. So they were traveling 4 hours a day to go to work and then come back from work, even when they had those jobs. And now they don't even have those jobs. So this is to create jobs at a socially inclusive living wage in close proximity to the unemployed, right there in Elliott County, near them, in their local community. What would jobs like that do for the local community? It would wake up the whole local community. It would bring prosperity to the local community. It would bring capital in from the outside to the local community. Going on, to create suitable work opportunities for people of varied skill levels, to serve the public purpose, to establish an effective minimum wage for the economy as a whole. Again, not just an effective minimum wage, a socially inclusive minimum wage for the economy as a whole. To operate as an, quote, employment buffer stock, unquote, in stabilizing the business cycle. And what does that mean? That there would be people working at the socially inclusive minimum wage who, when the private sector needed them, could be transferred over to the private sector. That's the buffer stock. What do we have now? we have an unemployed buffer stock. And they and the rest of us too are paying the costs of unemployment. But if we had an employment buffer stock, then we wouldn't be paying those costs anymore. Next objective, to enhance price stability by using the JG's buffer stock mechanism and minimum wage feature. Again, I emphasize socially inclusive minimum wage. It serves as a preventive policy that inoculates against the vast economic, social, and political costs, of unemployment, to be used as an institution, a vehicle for addressing other social ills, e.g., environmental concerns, care needs, and urban blight, etc. What about the etc. there? What about the rural blight that we see in those red areas, such as Elliott County? What would happen if the Democrats brought the federal job guarantee to the rural county? Would they go back for voting for FDR like Democrats? I think they likely would. But going on to the next, to put people and their needs at the forefront of public policy in order to empower and support them. And from Harris's political point of view, or the political point of view of Harris and Walz, in order to get them to vote for Democrats again. Key program features: permanent but voluntary. The program is permanent. It offers employment opportunities in the community to perform socially useful work. And she mentions, a living wage here. It offers a wage benefit package establishing a floor to living incomes. The wage in this proposal is $15 an hour plus benefits. So figuring the benefits at worth maybe $4 an hour, we're looking at $19 per hour back in 2018. But it's 6 years since 2018, and there's been an inflation price adjustment also because of the inflation we've had. Prices going up by 21% in the basics of life and more in terms of medical costs. So what would be a living wage now, a socially inclusive living wage? Well, Joe Stein thinks it's $25 per hour. Cornel West thinks it's $27 per hour. I don't think it's a fixed amount. I think it should be a cost-adjusted, socially inclusive living wage for each local area here, in the United States. In other words, you develop what's a socially inclusive living wage for the poorest area in the United States based on the CPI, and then you cost adjust that upward as needed in order to get to the CPI of certain areas of Alaska, New York City, other big cities here, in the United States. But there would be in this proposal a socially inclusive living wage across the whole United States. Here's the local bullet point, the local objective. The program takes the contract to the worker, creating jobs where the unemployed live. Remember the part, in the video where the guy says, what he said, lots of people stay here, but we lose people because there's nothing to do here. He was basically implying there's no work here. But they wanted their people to stay there. They didn't want the families to be broken up. They didn't want the communities to be broken up. And they were voting against the party that seemed to be creating the changes that were creating dead economies, okay, in that area. Why were they supporting Trump? Because Trump was promising to change it. But of course, he's very vague about how he would change it, and he has no particular program to change it. And in Project 2025, there's no program to change it. Anyway, targeted. By design, the program creates the greatest number of jobs in communities with the greatest number of multiple other social deprivations. The program should be federally funded and locally administered since it's an employment safety net. For financial sustainability reasons, the program is funded by the federal government, yes, because the local governments couldn't afford it. It wouldn't be financially sustainable for them, but primarily administered by local and municipal governments, nonprofits, and or social enterprises, and also cooperatives. Next point, it's an add-on program. This is a new program that serves as an option to, but does not displace existing programs. For example, people would have a choice between continuing to receive unemployment insurance. Of course, I have to add, if the new living wage in an average area in the United States is $25 per hour, that comes out to $52,000 per year. The unemployment benefits, for example, here in Virginia, the highest unemployment benefit is $357 a week. What's that? Maybe $1,500 a month. Whereas what's 52,000? Not quite. So, in that situation, not many people would choose to receive unemployment insurance. If they chose the former but still have trouble finding conventional private or public sector work once the UI benefits have been exhausted, they'll still have the option of enrolling in the JG program. It's not a work for a program. The program does not require people to work for their existing benefits. For Medicare, for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program or SNAP, not for Head Start, not for any of the other benefits, and not for example, if a basic income were also legislated, that's just another social safety net programs. There might be requirements for the social safety net program, but that would be a situation where people would choose whether to be employed or whether to be on the basic income program. Now, of course, the basic income program people have talked about, the $1,000 a month, that's no choice at all. So I happen to advocate for, but it wouldn't be part of the job guarantee legislation, I happen to advocate for a basic income program. To the level of the job guarantee program. I see I'm sort of going in and out here. Sorry. Sorry, I did not know I was so disconnected. Okay, I guess I had my phone off. I should probably turn it on in case that happens again. Sometimes I have my phone off so I don't have to take any calls. How's my audio now? Folks, can you hear me now? Okay, let me double check that you can hear me. Audio test. Yeah, my speakers seem to be all right, so I'm going to proceed as if, okay, I'm all right. Okay, thank you, Nishoba. So, okay, we seem to have audio and video, so I'm going on. So the point I was making is that I want to share okay, I want to share the screen. Okay, what I'm doing now is I'm giving you a list. We're trying to give you a list of jobs, but not having success in sharing that.
Lawrence Pierce, Joe's phone was muted 1 minute ago.
Yeah, I know, Bonnie.
No, but if it happens again, I'll tell you.
Thank you. Okay. Why am I not? Okay, I'm just going to read off lists of jobs. Now, this list is from Fadl Kaboub. I don't think I'm successfully sharing it, so I'll just read it. These are employer of last resort projects for skilled workers. Public school tutors, public school and a community musicians and artists, community healthcare consultants, recycling consultants, community historians, community ethnographers, community statisticians, community computer assistants, community web developers and webmasters, and national translation agents, websites devoted to information, dissipation, I think this should say dissemination, conservation of local, regional history, culture, and also traditions, arts, culture revival projects, conservation of cultural heritage, youth centers, community centers, healthcare centers. Such projects would involve higher education graduates with degrees, specializations in history, anthropology, sociology, computer science, geology, psychology, ethnography, social work, folklore studies, also literature, religious studies, art history, photography, journalism, communications, also statistics, music, dance, graphic design, architecture. And there's also a second list involving environmental cleanup, seashore cleanup, anti-deforestation, and anti-desertification. That is dune fixation. Anti-salinization, flood control, storage of runoff waters. These are projects that would provide jobs for people. Creation/expansions of public parks, low-cost housing, improvement of public infrastructure, recycling projects, installation of solar energy packages, construction and maintenance of small-scale irrigation systems, soil conservation, small dam construction, watersheds protection from erosion, also management of renewable resources such as forests and groundwater supplies, conservation of common pasture lands, terracing, land consolidation, construction also of biogas plants. So these are lists of projects and jobs supplied, by Fadl Kaboub that we would see, in a job guarantee program. So, so Lana points out planting trees, reading to the kids at the library, community gardens, anything that benefits the community. Thank you, Lana. Okay, that's true. Okay, so I propose that Harris run on a platform where the federal job guarantee program is highly visible. I propose that she promise to enact a federal job guarantee program areas, talking about job guarantee program and what it would do for rural areas. And of course, campaign in urban areas also. But this is the program that would wake up the rural areas here in America, and this is the kind of program that would bring back the Elliott counties of America to Democrats. This is the kind of program that was enacted by Democrats in the FDR administration, and they could be enacting once again. This is the kind of program that if people believe that Harris-Walz will introduce this kind of program, if they could campaign in a way that would make and appear to be truthful in advocating for such a program, they would begin to get many votes from the rural areas of rural areas, of America, the Elliott counties, of America. Not only in Kentucky, but in Alabama, in Arkansas, in Texas, in the rundown areas of the Midwest, more generally in all the flyover country areas. The program would even be popular in urban and suburban areas. A socially inclusive living wage to everybody in America who wanted one. That's my proposal for the Democrats. That's the way they could get big margins over Trump, because Trump would have no counter to that. His only counter would be to say the Democrats promise everything, but they never implement anything. And it would be necessary for Harris-Walz and other Democrats who were running to run on this and to say, absolutely, if they're elected, they're going to legislate this and introduce it into communities all across America. That's the way to get the Elliott counties back. That was the point, the central point that I wanted to make, in this particular video. Now, I know you have many questions, and I will get to these questions, in just a minute. But first, I want to point out one very important thing. which the Democrats also have to campaign on. And this brings up an article, okay, by Dave Dayen. Senate, take off the handcuffs. The Harris-Walz ticket and every Democrat are promising big things, and they'd be promising even more big things if they went for the job guarantee. But the filibuster makes that agenda impossible. Will they finally remove that the barrier if they win both houses of Congress and if they win, okay, the presidency? In the Democratic National Convention Hall and side events and hotel ballrooms and conference centers and on the campaign trail, lawmakers and candidates are promising big change. They've promised rights. They promised to end gerrymandering and voter suppression in a pair of consequential voting rights bills, the For the People Act and the John Lewis Freedom to Vote Act. They want to address affordable housing and child care and paid family leave and medical leave and child poverty. They want to transform the tax codes and so on. My so on would be, and they're promising a federal job guarantee. To accomplish all of this, or at least to make it unencumbered by artificial constraints and rules and processes, they need to end the circumstance whereby a minority of members in the U.S. Senate get a veto over everything the chamber does. At the heart upon is the imperative to reform, okay, the filibuster. Republicans will not vote for abortion rights or voting rights under a 60-vote Senate. Those bills will fail, as will the job guarantee bill. You could technically get tax reform and care economy investments done the way it was done in 2022 in the Inflation Reduction Act by using budget reconciliation, but that carries with it complicated rules about spending limitations within the 10-year budget window. Because Kamala Harris's tax plans raise trillions of dollars, the corporate tax rate of 28%, that would seem like no problem. But with the child tax credit expansion costing over $1 trillion within that same 10-year window, but Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat of New York, promising to repeal the cap on state and local tax deductions, costing hundreds of billions more than no taxes on tips proposals, and a drive to devote some portion of the proceeds to reducing the deficit even more. Those dollars won't stretch as much as people expect. The only way to ensure the full agenda can be passed without constraints is by ending the filibuster. He's right about that. But the only further additional thing you need to do is to make sure that the idea of having deficit reduction is dispelled. Okay, I noticed I was off again, and I believe I'm now back. Yeah, my internet connection is horrible tonight. I don't know what's wrong. Maybe it's getting ready to rain around here, or it is rain, or whatever. Anyway, what I was saying was, besides taking care of the filibuster, they have to get over the deficit reduction crap. That is not necessary. Some people might ask, well, maybe it's necessary for reducing inflation. There's no reason why the job guarantee should be inflationary, because people will be doing productive work, okay, on the job guarantee. So it should not be particularly inflationary. There might be a one-time spike caused by the fact that everybody has a living wage that's socially inclusive, but after that, things would certainly settle down, and the job guarantee program would be a barrier against further inflation because it's a price stabilization mechanism. So, okay, the way you convince people that deficit reduction is not necessary, the way you convince them it's not necessary is, there are two ways. The first way is you mint $100 trillion platinum coin and make sure the $100 trillion gets into the Treasury spending account. In other streams, I've explained how that is done. It's easy to do. It doesn't require any action by Congress. The other way you can do it is when you pass any money bills through Congress, ensure that the money necessary to pay for the appropriations, to pay for the continuing resolutions, is placed by the Federal Reserve in the Treasury spending account as soon as the appropriations bill is passed. An additional amount is also placed in the Treasury spending account, which is necessary to pay off all the debt and all the interest falling due within the period of the appropriation. I've also live streamed on that and pointed out only 2 sentences have to be added to appropriation bills or to other money bills. Only 2 sentences, 2 boilerplate sentences, to require the Federal Reserve, to do that. If the Democrats have control of Congress, they can put these 2 sentences in, and they will always result in having the money to pay for things in the Treasury spending account. No need to borrow any money anymore. Also, the federal debt would be getting gradually paid off, over a period of time. So along with the job guarantee program, it would be necessary for the Democrats to do those 2 things as well. Get rid of the filibuster and provide either for the $100 trillion platinum coin or for the boilerplate to get, into money bills. And Neshoba points out U.S. needs 40 to 60 trillion spent on infrastructure and production. The U.S. is nowhere near its limits. All bank loans credit would have to be stopped as well if demand pull was responsible for prices. I completely agree with you, Neshoba. I don't think it would be inflationary, at all. I assume you're talking about 40 to 60 trillion over 10 years. I completely agree with that, except I think it's more likely to be between 80 trillion and $100 trillion. But that's a subject, for another day. This stream was on the importance for Harris, if she wants to get a big win over Trump, to start campaigning on the job guarantee program. That would be a game changer for her. It would make the red states, voters in red states, flock to her banner. Rural voters in red states would flock to her banner if she would do that. Now, why am I coming out for Harris, to do that? Don't I realize that Harris doesn't have as good a platform as Cornel West or Claudia de la Cruz or Jill Stein? I do realize that. I do realize that. I do realize that Jill Stein is campaigning on things like the federal job guarantee. I know very well she is, and a lot of other great things too. But we have to face facts, folks. There are, 66 days left in this campaign, until election day. A movement cannot be built for Jill Stein in those 60 days, or for Cornel West, or for Claudia de la Cruz. If we want the federal job guarantee passed, Harris is going to have to advocate for it, go on the line for it, as are other Democratic candidates. And when they get in, they're going to have to legislate it, and the executive is going to have to sign that particular bill. Now, I very much want that to happen. I think it will have the effect over a period of time of remaking the Democratic Party and improving its performance in lots of other areas too. That's why I'm coming out for this. That's why, I want it, to happen. As for the third parties, here's what I think we do. If we're in safe states, either for Trump, or for Harris, my preference is we vote for one of the third parties and try to get them established. And Steve says, yeah, Jill Stein will get maybe 2%. Let's be realistic. Yeah, that's what I think. But 2% is not that far from 5%. So if we're in a safe state, we don't lose anything by voting for Jill Stein. Lana says, I know Walz is willing to discuss the job guarantee. I spoke to him about it myself briefly 2 years ago. How to get the Kamala on board. How to get her on board is to emphasize that the job guarantee, if she runs on it, could be her salvation. That Trump is too close. And besides, she doesn't want to have another close election, which the right thinks it could possibly turn around with various kinds of efforts, various kinds of post-election efforts. We don't want to see a repeat. We don't want to see a repeat of January 6th, 2021. I think the safest way we can prevent that kind of repeat is to have a landslide in favor of somebody. In this case, I want a landslide in favor of the Democrats. Why? Yes, because they're the lesser of two evils. They are evil, but if they enact a federal job guarantee, they'll be removing some of the evil. If they enact some of the other things they have planned, they'll be removing more of the evil. And the more Democrats there are, the more likely they'll be removing some of that evil. Because the Republicans won't be there to make it close. Won't be there to make it close. So, I know many people will think that on the dictatorship front, there's not much difference between Trump, and Kamala. I believe there is. I've said on numerous occasions that what we've had now under the Democrats while they've been in office has been an instance of inverted totalitarianism. I don't like inverted totalitarianism, especially neoliberal type of inverted totalitarianism. But I am free to stream, at least in certain areas. I understand that these inverted totalitarians are starting to shut down some people doing very valuable work, such as Scott Ritter and some of the other people who are streaming in international politics. And this eventually may include myself, because they don't agree with the counter narratives that we are giving on international politics. And they don't want anybody to hear the counter narratives or see the counter narratives. So they're starting to shut us down. I don't know how bad that's going to get. If a Kamala administration takes over, it may get pretty bad. But folks, at least we won't be in concentration camps. We won't be subject to a rigorous secret police type of regime. We won't be subject to gangs of people beating us up. I believe we would be subject to that in a second Trump administration. And to those of you who doubt that and refer to this as Trump derangement syndrome, I recommend you read such books as Escape from Freedom, The Origins of Totalitarianism, by Hannah Arendt, The History of the Rise of the Fascists in Europe, and the rise of fascist authoritarians in certain other nations. And you recognize who Trump actually is. He's no populist. He's someone who is out for himself. And who, if he has the power, if he has an administration, and he has a plan, that would allow him to exert tight control over everybody, he will do that. That is his nature. So, I want to challenge Kamala as soon as possible. That is very, very important. But first, we have to get rid of Trump. We have to get rid of the fascists. We have to make sure they don't come back. The best way to do that is a landslide rejecting fascism. That is what we need. That is why I proposed that Harris put forward a federal job guarantee and open up a wide margin between she, and Trump. Later on, because she's an inverted totalitarian and not an out-and-out fascist, we will have an opportunity to beat her, at the polls in 2028. Lana says, I don't know how to get a hold of her. Lana says, can we get Sirota to tap her on the shoulder? I don't think Sirota can. How about Harvey K? I don't think she listens to Harvey K either. Steve Wolfbrand said, looks like Trump is going to win, Doc. But better get used to it. I'm not getting used to it. I'm going to fight against it until the last vote, okay, is counted. After that, I'm going to keep on fighting against it. And I hope none of us get used to it, because it's going to be a horror, an absolute horror. On the other hand, if we can get a federal job guarantee out of this conflict, we'd be doing something very, very good. A federal job guarantee at a socially inclusive living wage of $52,000 a year plus benefits, that being the wage floor for the whole economy, that would be a great step forward for the United States. About how to get a hold of Kamala to make the proposal, I'm going to investigate whether Kamala has contacts with Derek Hamilton. She may. Maybe he's the person to get the federal job guarantee to her. How can we do this? We need a plan. I think the plan is we need to find out whether Derek Hamilton can speak to her. So Solana says, Hamilton, that's an avenue. It may be, okay, an avenue. She may know him and have respect for him. Is he on board with the JG? Absolutely, he's on board with the JG. He's very close in his positioning of the JG to Pavlina. He was the one who was advocating for the JG within the Sanders campaign. He was the surrogate who was advocating for the JG. Neshoba says not happening. They're recreating the 2008 great financial crash. Well, I don't see them doing that. I think they know if they don't do something, the great financial crash is something. As I've mostly heard Hamilton discussing the baby bonds. Yeah, baby bonds are a thing of Hamilton and Sandy Darity. But for Derek Hamilton, the other thing is the federal job guarantee. So there is that. So I guess I'm done for tonight. I hope you like this. I certainly like this. I hope that none of us are getting used to the possibility of Donald Trump, because this is far from over. Far from over.
Bernie, should get in touch with him?
I don't know whether she would listen to Bernie. I think Bernie would approach her and tell her how great the federal job guarantee is from a moral point of view and what it does for people. But I think she has to be approached from the point of view of what the federal job guarantee would do for her. Mm-hmm. I think there's a possibility it could open up a 20-point gap between she and Trump. Yeah. That's what she needs. Mm-hmm. And if she thought that, she might well go after the federal job guarantee. Anyway, folks, that's all for tonight. I'll be back on Tuesday with an international relations show. I hope you liked this one. I was motivated to do it because I came across that video of Elliott County, and it was just too obvious to me. I've always thought this, of course, but it just brought this again to mind for me in a very powerful way, that if she chooses to say it, Kamala Harris has something to say to the Elliott counties all across the United States. Good night, everybody.